Today we're continuing our study of Change Your Thinking, Change Your Life based on the 2,500-year-old scripture, the Tao Te Ching, which legend has it was written by the great sage Lao Tzu. Now, this book has been translated into thousands of manuscripts and into almost every language. So thousands of different editions. This scripture has been considered one of the great scriptures of the East. And what's so neat is that it's universal. These teachings are universal. I always love that statement, truth is one and paths are many. As we are all climbing the mountain of truth, as we get to the top, we realize, oh, the Buddhists are climbing the same mountain. The Christians are climbing. The Jewish people are climbing. The agnostics are climbing. We're all climbing the same mountain. The atheists are climbing, and even if they don't realize it. We're all climbing that same mountain to discover inner happiness, inner peace, inner joy. You know, the connection with what Lao Tzu calls the Tao. The Tao is the same as what Jesus called spirit, everywhere present, in all, through all, the source of everything. And so today we're going to look at verses 3 and 4, which is living contentment and living infinitely. So let's begin by checking out the third verse. Putting a value on status will create contentiousness. If you overvalue possessions, people begin to steal. By not displaying what is desirable, you will cause the people's hearts to remain undisturbed. Now, mind you, he might have been talking to leaders and government people also, but keep in mind that, as Dyer points out, it's talking to all of us because we're all leaders, right? Or we can all be leaders to our loved ones, our family, our friends, and the larger community, people we interact with. So keep that in mind too. So Lao Tzu continues, he says, the sage governs by emptying minds and hearts, by weakening ambitions and strengthening bones. Practice not doing. When action is pure and selfless, everything settles into its own perfect place. Wow, right? That's a lot, he says there. That's a lot. First of all, he's saying don't seek after status. Don't make your life about status as far as how much money you make, how many things you own, what position you have, positions of authority and power. Why? We certainly see that all around us, don't we? In the world. Why is he saying don't do that? And also empty the minds of those you know of seeking status and possessions and all that. Because what it says essentially is people who are seeking status, to why? Because they want to impress others, they want to feel important, they want to feel valuable. Don't we all want that? Of course we do. We all want to feel important, we all want to feel valuable, we all want to be the best that we can, but here's the thing. We don't need to have it based on external things. See, that's what he's saying. People feel empty inside, which is why they are seeking status outside. They're seeking symbols of, look how important I am, which, by the way, is a comparison to others too, isn't it? I have more money than so-and-so, so I'm important. Or I have more power, I'm in an important position, so I'm important. It's all in comparison to everyone else, isn't it? Well, what happens when you don't have that position anymore? that the thing is, if it's all dependent on money and position, now there's fear of losing it. That's why the Buddha said, and some metaphysicians are going, well, that's negative thinking. I used to think that too. That's negative thinking. The Buddha said, life is suffering. What did he mean by that? He meant when you're living for the outer world to make you happy, to make you fulfilled, now you got to control everything. You got to keep that position of power. You got to make sure that money is up there so it's impressive. It's control, it's manipulation, it's all that stuff that goes into that. And your well-being and your worth and your importance is tied up into it. Now, the spiritual-minded person might think, oh, I'm not into that. I'm way beyond that, Justin. I'm not seeking to achieve those positions of power and all that. I know that I'm worthwhile and important in myself. And that's good. That's what he's saying. He's saying, understand that you are important, period. You deserve respect because you exist. You're a human being. You are important to life. You're important to spirit. You're important to the Tao. The Tao is being you. Can you think of anything more important than that? The creator itself of all life is being you. So you're inherently important. Now, the world may not agree with it, because they're playing this outer game. But Lao Tzu, that's why we're having this conversation. Lao Tzu is saying, don't go after the status. No, find something within yourself. Because when you're looking outside, you're basically saying, I'm empty. I'm not whole. I'm not good enough. I need more of this, more of that, in order to be impressive and be important. Well, that's not the way to contentment, because everything else is going to be always changing. It's never going to be enough. I've heard Michael Singer, who, built a huge business and interacted with top business people around the world. He said, whether you're a millionaire, a multimillionaire, or whatever the amount of money, it's never enough. People are never secure unless they find a different source of security, within. So that's what Lao Tzu is saying about status. I love something Dennis Waitley, who was a man who worked with Olympic, world-class athletes. He was a trainer of people of all kinds on potential. You might remember his cassette audio programs, dating it now, cassette, right? On the psychology of winning. And he wrote a book called Seeds of Greatness. And he used to, when he would speak to younger people, teenagers and kids, he would have these signs that they could put on: doctor, lawyer, mother, maintenance person, whatever, auto mechanic, movie star. And he would tell them, this is your sign, and now I want you all to line up according to your order of importance. And so the kids would jockey as to who was more important. And they would have a chance to talk. And so the movie star would, I'm most important. Everybody would applaud the movie star because I'm rich and I'm famous and everybody wants to be me. And people would applaud. And then the lawyer would get up. I should be the most important because without me, all of you would be in jail. And I make as much money or more than doctors nowadays. How you like that? And everybody would applaud, and then the mother would come up. And lighter applause. I am the most important because without me, none of you would even exist. And guess what? The janitor wouldn't even try to come up. Right? The auto mechanic, he wasn't even going to try to come up. Not with doctors and lawyers and judges and all these other people. So Dennis Waitley would say, look, I asked you to line up according to your order of importance. All I wanted you to do is form a circle and hold hands. Because you're all important. That's what I think Lao Tzu is wanting us to understand. We're all important. And then he says, don't go after possessions. Don't overvalue stuff. Doesn't mean we don't have possessions. Nothing wrong with having possessions. Just don't make that the point, because again, if there's something missing inside of us, if we feel a lack, we're going to try to find it in the outer world, aren't we, if we don't know any better? So if I could just have this, then I'll feel good and I can be impressive. And if we don't have a sense of who we are, a sense of ourselves, we may try to find it in the outer world. And we think, that's who I am. This house that I have, that's who I am. And my stuff, my car, my this, my that. Leo Biscaglia told a story one time. He was attending a conference, and it was a very learned people. They were reading these papers, and at one point he said, I just had enough. I left, and I took a walk, and I went outside, and I was walking along the boardwalk by the water, and I saw this man sitting on a bench, and he looked like, he was homeless perhaps, but he looked happy, he looked content. He went over to the man, he said, sir, you look so happy and content. They started talking. What is your secret? And the man said, Sonny, and he said, I love when someone calls me Sonny. He said, the secret to being happy and content is to keep your mind full and your bowels empty. He said, that was good advice. Leo said, that was much more wise than anything I could have heard with those learned papers in that conference. See, it's not about collecting. That man didn't have stuff. We're not saying that's the way to go, okay? We're not advocating being homeless. We're just saying, let's not think we're going to find stability in our stuff. Let's not collect things because we're lacking inside, trying to make up for something we're missing. And there's practical things too. The Buddha said the more things you have, the more things you have to worry about. I love the story of the Yogananda, his teacher, Yukteswar, who was a rather stern guy. He didn't care, he wasn't trying to impress anybody. He had few students because of his methods. And one of his students bought him a gift. It was a rug, a small rug. And Yukteswar said, no, thank you. It's just one more thing I have to clean. When you're attached to your stuff, guess what happens? It gets scratched, it gets broken, it gets lost. This is why Jesus the Christ said, seek the treasures of heaven within, where moth and rust does not consume. See, in those days of Jesus, they used to keep stuff in their house, in the walls, in the ground, and so on. And where moth and rust could damage the stuff. And he was saying, build your treasures up in here, where moth can't get to it. It won't rust. So one of the suggestions Wayne Dyer has in regard to the fourth verse is, first of all, to realize that you're not trying to get happiness. Happiness is the way. To bring happiness and joy to whatever you're doing. See, it's within us. Bring that to whatever you're doing. And you will find that the right people, the right things will show up in our lives. Doesn't mean we're going to be slothful or lazy or whatever. No, it means turn within and be guided and follow that guidance in our lives. And as Jesus said, seek first the kingdom, and all these things will be added unto you. Doesn't mean sitting in the room praying for that soulmate to show up. No, it means follow your guidance. It means bring joy, bring love, bring happiness into whatever you're doing, and you'll meet people. Things will show up. People will show up. Opportunities will unfold as you follow your guidance. And Lao Tzu says, he talks about being selfless, right? In the fourth verse, the third verse. He says, practice not doing. When action is pure and selfless, everything settles into its own perfect place. Instead of seeking our ego-driven desires, as Wayne Dyer talks about. Instead of following our ego-driven determination and ambitions of status, of power, of trying to get happiness outside of ourselves, trying to impress others, and all that stuff, he says, get beyond that by asking, instead, bringing your happiness with you, discovering the joy and contentment within your own being, and asking the question, how may I serve? How may I serve? That's very different, isn't it? Than I want this, I'm going to get this, versus how may I serve? And when we do that, everything settles into place, as Lao Tzu says, right? It settles into place. And now there's no fear of losing. There's no need to control. There's no need to struggle because you're there to serve. You're there to serve the spirit within you, the Tao within you. I'm not saying, and they're not saying, say yes to everything everybody wants. No, you got to have boundaries. You're serving the spirit within you. See? I like how Michael Singer puts it. He says, raise the moment that's in front of you. That's all you got to do. Just raise the moment in front of you. How can I raise this moment in front of me? There's a moment in front of you, right? There's something happening in front of you. How can you raise that? Then everything starts to settle in place, right? It's a beautiful verse. There's a lot of power and meaning and depth in this way of living. Can you see how that could transform how you live your life and think? Can you see how you can be a leader to others, to encourage them not to seek after status, not to seek after stuff, that there's something deeper and more meaningful and a way to more lasting joy and contentment. So now let's briefly look at verse number 4, which is under the chapter Living Infinitely. Lao Tzu says, the Tao is empty but inexhaustible, bottomless, the ancestor of it all. Within it, the sharp edges become smooth, the twisted knots loosen, the sun is softened by a cloud, the dust settles into place. So when you're living in the Tao, everything smooths out, softens, becomes much easier, harmonious. And then he says, it is hidden, but always present. I do not know who gave birth to it. It seems to be the common ancestor of all, the father of things. I like how he says, I don't know who gave birth to it. It seems to be the father and ancestor of all. I like how he does that, right? There's a little modesty in that. I almost was going to say earlier, sometimes spiritual people may say, I'm not seeking power, Justin. I'm not seeking money. I'm not seeking all that stuff. I'm way beyond that. You know, I'm spiritual. So now the ego latches on to a different outer label. I'm superior to those people who are seeking status and power. I am spiritual. See how that can become a trap too? Again, it's more outer labels. It's more outer stuff. I love the story of the two rabbis, and they were talking to each other in the temple, and one of the rabbis suddenly threw himself down on the floor and he said, I am nothing. And the other rabbi looked at him and he threw himself on the floor and he said, I am nothing. And then the maintenance guy, the janitor, looked over and he thought, well, and he came up and he threw himself on the floor and he said, I am nothing. And the rabbi looked over and he said, look who thinks he's nothing. Yeah, so let's not fall into that trap. So here, Lao Tzu is saying, I don't know who created this presence that's everywhere present, it's in all and through all. And look how consistent that is with what Jesus taught. God is spirit. Spirit is undifferentiated, you can't limit it, it's everywhere present, it's in all and through all. The Hebrew Bible says God is in all and through all. It's a universal teaching That's why every human being is breathing and their hearts are beating, because this universal Tao is causing it all to happen. And as an expression of this Tao, you are infinite. You are infinite, not your body, not your personality, but that part of you that's one with the Tao, one with Spirit. This is what the great saints and sages are telling us. Jesus said, I and the Father are one. And he was also saying the same thing about you and me. You are one with that infinite presence. And one wise person, when asked, I even asked a question, I remember asking, well, how did God get so lucky to be God? You ever wonder that? How did he get so lucky to be God? Who created him? Well, one wise sage said, no one created God. God has always been. The Tao has always been. Interesting, isn't it? And you and I are expressions of it. We're part of it. Where else will we come from? We had to come out of something. We came out of the Tao, and we're being upheld by the Tao. St. Paul said, in God you live and move and have your being. We live in it. It is us. You're an eternal being. I love what Dr. Dyer has to say about these verses. He says, consider all things that seem to be a problem from the perspective of the eternal Tao. Right? Think of something that you've been worried about. Something that's maybe even been depressing or upsetting. He says, now, think about that from the awareness that how would you think and feel about that in 10 years? I said 10 years. He actually says 100 years. How are you going to think about that in 100 years? How are you going to feel about that in 1,000 years? That's the perspective of, I'm living in eternity right now. People tend to think of eternity as something, when they die, then they're in eternity. We're in eternity right now. If you're an eternal being, part of the Tao, eternal Tao, then you're going to be alive forever. Whoa. How would the problem that you're facing right now look in 500 years? Like nothing, right? That's what the sages all tell us. They tell us what you're worried about is really nothing, ultimately, in the long run. That's hard to understand when it's right in your face, isn't it? It really is. But that's why we're taking this time together right now to remind ourselves of the truth, so that when we do face something that's right in our face, we're able to get ourselves back into a bigger perspective, put things into a greater perspective. Wayne Dyer himself was once asked, are you upset about, how your book is not right now on the bestseller list? And he had many bestsellers. And he said, no, I'm not worried about that, because when I write for people who are going to be around 500 years from now. Wow. Now, do you think he held that perspective every moment? I doubt it. I'm sure he got upset on certain days. I'm sure he had his moments just like we do. In fact, I know he did. I had dinner with Wayne Dyer. I've talked to him a few times in the past when he was on the planet. And, he had his moments. But what a great foundation to get ourselves into, to think more in terms from that infinite Tao perspective, right? And the other thing that Dr. Dyer, a couple of other neat ideas he has, is to consider that whatever your problem is, the Tao is present. The answer is present. Spirit is present. He says, affirm for yourself, everything I need is now here. Everything I need is now here. What do you need in your life? Everything I need is now here. What do you mean, Justin? I need $100. I don't see $100 right here. I need to pay my rent. I don't see the rent payment right here. I need a healed body. Where's the healed body? That's not what we're saying, is it? We're saying that the source of all is now here. And in that source of all is everything that we need. So what is required is that we get in tune with that source of all. We get in tune, we affirm and know everything I need is now here because the Tao is here. And because Spirit is here. And as I get in tune with that presence, I get creative ideas. I get inspired. I get directed. See, now our trust and our faith is in this presence. It's not just in our limited idea and what we can see with our eyes. Okay, maybe you don't have $100 in front of you, but you've got the infinite eternal Tao, which is going to make it possible for you to do whatever you need to do as you rely on that and seek to get in tune with it. As you practice what we've been saying, which is don't seek it out there, but begin to ask, how can I serve? Begin to look from an eternal Tao perspective to start to think in terms of how can I make a difference? How can I raise the moment in front of me? And as Dyers says, review your goals and your desires and your intentions. And as Lao Tzu says, do nothing, meaning surrender them to the Tao. Don't fret about why isn't this happening yet? How come I'm not experiencing this yet? Blah, blah, blah. Trust that the Tao has your back, that Spirit is working. Now, that doesn't mean you do nothing or you become slothful. Doesn't mean that we're not going to have to go out and beat every tree to find the job we're looking for, shake every tree. No, that doesn't mean that. It means follow your inner guidance. It means God is my source, and I'm following my inner guidance. I'm living for God. I'm living for the Tao. See, that's a very different place. That requires faith, doesn't it? So we're not going to jump right into that complete faith in the moment. You learn as you go, and that's what I had to do. Because I remember, some of you heard me say it, and back when I was in college, where I just started to feel lost. I can relate to that song, Amazing Grace. I once was lost, because I felt lost. I was, in a relationship, first relationship, and I was changing inside. I was becoming negative. I was becoming critical inside myself. And then I felt like I was burned out too. I was like, oh my God, now I got to do it all again? Climb this ladder of success for what? It's not that great. And then I started developing, I don't know if social anxiety is completely what it was, but just because I wasn't feeling good inside myself, and I started to get very analytical, I started to become self-conscious. Maybe more like shyness would relate more to what I was experiencing. And I never really felt that before in my life. So all that stuff happened. But as time went on, as I sought the Tao, only it wasn't for me the Tao at the time, it was God, whatever name you want to call it. It was God, it was truth, it was Spirit. As time went on, my mind got clearer, my emotions got calmer. I developed an inner strength and a power that has served me through what could break a lot of people. And a lot of people have been broken by similar experiences. And, when you test your faith, when you develop your faith and take some small steps, it grows. It grows. You can face bigger things. You can take on bigger things. And you have faith that somehow things are working together for good. As Lao Tzu talks about in verses 3 and 4, the rough places become smooth, the knots become untangled, and you start to discover a power and a joy and a strength that no one and nothing, moth and rust, cannot consume. And you always know that it's with you. And this is why God, through Jesus, said, "Lo, I am with you always." And isn't that exactly what Lao Tzu is saying? Lo, the Tao, Spirit, God, the presence, the Father, the Mother, is with you always. Live in tune with that presence. And let us get still for a moment. And let us go forth this day knowing that everything I need is here now. Everything I need is here now. Because the Tao is here. Because Spirit is here. The I Am, the divine mind, consciousness is now here. And it is unfolding and expressing in and through and as me. And I get myself in tune with it. I don't need to impress people. I don't need to live up to the world's ideas of what it takes to be so-called important. I am important. I'm important to life. I'm important to God. I'm not here to impress. I'm here to be impressed. Impressed from within by the Spirit that is expressing in and through and as me. I'm here to be me. Here to be me with a capital M. The me that is a unique expression of the one presence and activity. And as I seek to be who I am, to let God be and express as me, things unfold in a perfect way. People show up, opportunities unfold. And yet, that's icing on the cake, because each day I'm living in gratitude. Each day I'm living in wonder and awe of being a human being, being an expression of spirit, of being alive on this planet, of being alive, and all the amazing stuff happening in front of me. I am filled. I am content. I am happy within my own being. This is the ideal that I move in the direction of. I affirm it for myself now, and I practice. I practice. And when I lose track, when I get lost, I wake up and I'm found again. I get back up and I keep walking. And I thank you, Father, Mother, God, for your guidance and your direction. I thank you, Tao, the eternal, the infinite, the everlasting Tao, that is always here, always with me, always within me, and within everyone. And so it is. Amen. Would you please join me in saying the prayer for protection? The light of God surrounds us. The love of God enfolds us. The power of God protects us. The presence of God watches over us. Wherever we are, God is, and all is well. Thank you for being with us today for our live stream service. I want to thank our musicians, Kelley Hunt and Eddie Watkins Jr., for their music coming to us from Kansas and Florida. And I want to thank you for being here, for lending your consciousness to this experience, your prayers, your thoughts, your consciousness to helping to make a difference on the planet for yourself and for others. And I look forward to seeing you again next time. I'm Justin Epstein. God bless you. Namaste.